He was in full view of the public, but it has to be said that actually there weren't many people around, contrary to the 7 years during which he's been here, which we followed step by step, and his whole process through the British judicial system. We were there when he was first, there was that extradition request at Westminster Magistrates, then at Woolwich Crown Court. He lost. There was a green light for his extradition, let's remember, to Sweden for allegations that appear to have been dropped of a sexual nature that he always denied and that he said were politically motivated. Then he appealed to that. He went to the High Court. He lost there. He then took it to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, and he lost there again. And that's when he jumped bail, which is where I'm going to turn to my guest, who was involved at that point. Why was he involved? Well, because he is actually the former consul, Fidel Narvaez. Thank you very much indeed for being with us here on France 24. You were the consul from 2010 to 2018. Therefore, you were here when when Julian Assange came here. What is your reaction to his arrest this morning and these charges? First, the British ones of him jumping bail. Then we learnt that there is indeed an extradition request by the US authorities.
This is a very, very sad day for human rights, for freedom of expression, and certainly is a very sad day for my country. The day Julian Assange came for protection and Ecuador stepped forward to protect him, I felt so proud of my country and of my president to give that example to the world that no journalist should be persecuted for publishing the truth. That is the bottom of all of this. So this day is very sad because the current Ecuador, which is very, very much different than the one in 2012, has completely destroyed all the international legislation on political asylum under the pressure of the United States in order to hand over a journalist that is going to be extradited to the United States. That's the bottom of the thing. Ecuador was absolutely right when granted asylum. Julian Assange was absolutely right in asking for asylum. And what happened today is shameful.
So, of course, you're referring to, it was President Correa, today it's President Moreno. You were telling me who tweeted, as Julian Assange was actually being arrested, he tweeted that asylum was no longer granted by your country. Are you worried about freedom of expression, freedom for journalists in and of association in today's Ecuador?
Of course, of course. I'm worried about that, but this is not something just about Ecuador. This is a precedent for any journalist in the world. The application of US legislation, the application extraterritorially for any journalist, beside if it's American or not, beside from which country it publishes, is at risk of being later requested for extradition if they publish something that the United States dislikes or disapproves.
You say that there's been pressure from the United States, but clearly when we listen to the Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, he says that it is right, so has the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, that Julian Assange face British justice and that they're not saying whether he's innocent or guilty as far as the extradition request with the US is concerned. British relations with Ecuador have not always gone well, certainly when he was first here in the embassy. Now, Jeremy Hunt has said, the Foreign Secretary today, that there's been a careful relationship that has been a new collaboration with Ecuador. What do you know about that?
Well, what happened today is clearly a coordination between the British, the Ecuador of President Moreno, and the United States. This is not something unilateral taken by Ecuador. This is clearly a collaboration. The British have patiently waited for the political conditions in Ecuador to change, and that already happened with Moreno, and there you go. They have what they always wanted.
what they've always wanted. Well, certainly a fugitive from justice, a wanted man by the British authorities, also by the US, clearly. And we hear that those Swedish charges that we thought had been dropped, had expired, are now also being looked at by the Swedish authorities.